Test 1, 2.
Almost. All right, everybody ready? Good morning, everybody. How are you doing today? Day before Election Day. Everybody's excited. All right. But this is our regularly scheduled morning meeting of Flagler County Board of County Commissioners, November 4th, 2024. It is 9:00 a.m. If everybody could please stand for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation, indivisible, liberty and justice. Thank you. All right, we take this time in the agenda for a moment of silence for individual prayer, reflection, or meditation. We take this time to honor and remember our first responders and the men and women in our military who keep us safe and protect our freedoms at home and abroad. All right, thank you very much. Item 2, we have an addition to the agenda. I want to bring this up for consideration with the board. It is proposed consent. Item 7N, it's consideration and approval of a 17th Amendment to the Professional Services Agreement 17-0032Q between Flagler County and Foth Infrastructure and Environment LLC for engineering services in support of post-Hurricane Milton assistance with the beach. That I'm looking to see if there's a motion to add this to consent or if you want to discuss it on business.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we add this new
7N,
to 7N,
Second.
add it to
consent agenda.
consent. Okay. I have a motion by Commissioner Hanson for adding this to consent as item 7N, seconded by Commissioner Sullivan. Is there any comment from the public? Public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. That'll be added as item 7N under consent. I have a few announcements. First, Florida Speaker of the House Paul Renner, the Florida State Guard Executive Director Mark Thiem, Flagler County Sheriff Rick Staley, and the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners cordially invite all to the groundbreaking ceremony for the new Florida State Guard Multi-Agency Regional Training Facility that is today at 2 p.m. at Justice Lane in Bunnell. Also want to remind everybody to visit our transparency dashboards at flaglercounty.gov. You can view our citizen advisory boards and look at the open positions for the different boards. We have capital projects that are identified, all of our capital projects. You can see the status, the funding, and the completion schedule. And we also have one on our drainage maintenance projects. You can view that as well under the transparency dashboard. It's a quick link from our homepage. Upcoming commission meetings, workshops, and special meetings. Our next regular meeting is Monday, November 18th at 5 p.m. All right, today we do not have any recognitions, proclamations, or presentations. They're all waiting for the next meeting in November, I guess. We will move to community outreach. This is a 30-minute time period that's been allocated for public comment on any consent agenda item or topic that is not on the agenda. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes to address the commission. Speakers should approach the podium, identify themselves, and direct comments to the chair. So at this time, we'll open up public comment. All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Is there any specific comments anybody wants to make on consent items? Commissioner Hanson?
No, sir.
Commissioner Payton?
No, sir.
Commissioner Sullivan?
None?
Commissioner O'Brien? Okay. With that, we will move to our consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion by Commissioner Hanson, seconded by Commissioner Sullivan. Was there anything anybody wanted to pull before we did that? Just wanted to make sure. Didn't ask that. All right,
No.
seeing none, we'll go back to the motion by Commissioner Hanson and seconded by Commissioner Sullivan for approval of consent. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, we will move on to our general business items. First item up for consideration is a resolution establishing the Flagler County Lehigh Trail Management Plan Advisory Committee. And who will be presenting this one today? Mike, is Mike here? We moved too fast for you, I think. When there's no presentations, the beginning just flies right by.
Right. Lehigh Trail, the mountain bike course, get a lot of views. It's like that, as we're waiting.
I can probably give you a little bit explanation.
you.
The Lehigh Trail is under a land management agreement that we have with the state of Florida. Every 10 years, we have to update that plan. It's been, I believe, 13 years since we pulled together a committee to evaluate and come forward with developing an update to that management plan. So what you have in front of you is consideration of a resolution that will pull together and reestablish that Flagler County Lehigh Trail Management Plan Advisory Committee. It is something that is required as part of our land management of the property. As it is presented right now, it was last adopted in March of 2002, which was the Lehigh Trail Management Plan. It does have a lifespan of 10 years. It did convene a committee back in 2011 that updated the plan as it's presented today. And then what we're looking for is reestablishing the committee once again, looking for 5 different members of the community that represent specific groups. So what we have in front of you is a representative of the lead management company, which would be Flagler County, somebody that represents the local private property owners, somebody from Soil and Water Conservation District, typically that's somebody through the St. Johns River Water Management District, as well as a local conservation organization representative, and then a local elected official. And that's the criteria as it's established right now in the resolution. So we're just looking for approval to establish that so we can go out and fill that board.
Okay, great. There is no Soil and Water Conservation District, correct? Didn't they get rid of those, or are they still in effect? They used to be elected officials, but, so that's why I was wondering, I'm glad you mentioned we may want to just add, / St. Johns River Water Management District, so we cover that.
We can certainly do that. I think when we looked at the last makeup of the board, I do believe it was somebody from the St. Johns River Water Management District, so.
So we'll just, if there's a motion, we'll just add that to item C.
I'll make a motion to approve item 8A, consideration of resolution establishing the Flagler County Lehigh Trail Management Advisory Committee.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Sullivan,
Second.
second by Commissioner Hanson. At this time, I'll go to public comment. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak on this item? Yes, sir. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning, Commissioners. Richard Hamilton, live in Island Estates. I'm an enthusiast for trails. I mean, we know the Lehigh Trail is a very important part. I was struck when I looked at this that there's no representative of a trail user, whether cycling, pedestrians, except perhaps some of these 5 people might be that. But I think it would be very good in that management plan to include somebody. I am not volunteering. I just want to make that clear. But there are plenty of other people who use that trail. The Lehigh Trail not only is an important part of the background of Flagler County and attracts a lot of people here, but it's also part of our future in that it's one of the future designated east-west sun trail system, that and Palm Coast Parkway. So getting a trail user and somebody who is interested in not just the existing Lehigh Trail, but how it might relate to its future use, I think would be important. So I just wanted to make that comment and encourage you to get a trail user of some sort on that committee. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just for future reference, I'll be leaving, but it's in my district for future reference if you're looking for someone to be on the board. It is in District 3.
Okay. I don't know if, there's opportunities other than adding the language, but the local private property owner, the local conservation organization, through the application process, we can identify if the applicants are trail users so that we get a cross-section, but I'll leave it up to, are you good with that, Commissioner Sullivan? Did you want to change anything?
No, landowner, that kind of thing could be that person.
But we'll make sure that at least that we identify that. I think would be a good idea in the application. Okay, have a motion is there anybody else for public comment? Have a motion by Commissioner Sullivan, seconded by Commissioner Hanson. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Item 8B, adoption of a resolution to vacate a portion of the plat of a portion of the Town of Espanola subdivision and a portion of the plat of First Addition to Espanola, Florida subdivision. Mr. Mangle, good morning, sir.
Adam Mangle, Growth Management Director. I've got a few slides here. This is the location of the annexation, of the vacation portion that's here. This is, you see North Old Dixie Highway along the east side of the property. What I wanted to show here that I think is most telling is that this is already planted pine. It's silviculture. You can see the tree rows that are there. It was never developed as a plat, but it was platted. And so you had these underlying plat lines that are here. The requested vacation is just to make those go away. So both the right-of-ways that we have, Ocean Boulevard, the North Burnside Avenue, Edminster Avenue, those portions you can see then to the west that no other parcels are relying on those for access because they're not constructed. And so you can see this is what's referred to as, and it seems kind of bumpy for us to have it listed as we do in our resolution, but that's actually the title here of this. The title of this plat was a portion of the Town of Espanola. And so this was what this plat was known as. And so this dates back, I think this one and the next one, both date back to prior to the establishment of Flagler County. These were St. Johns County plats in both of these, I believe. First Addition to Espanola, Florida was the other one that we have in play here. And so you have both of those that are within this single resolution for the vacation, respective to the lots, to the rights of way that are within these. This is what it looks like now formally with that kind of modern touch with it, where the surveyor's going out, shown both of those plats, shown the extent of the lot, shown the extent of the right-of-ways within those. And so this was what you had included in your packet along with the utility consents. Again, it's vacant. We do have that bordering along Old Brick Road. Never was developed. Lands are in 2 separate parcels and 2 separate plats. And then we have those consent letters no one's deprived of access with this request. So with that, you have, I believe, those three options we've continued to present to you. Approval of the resolution vacating those portions of the plats for a portion of the town of Espanola and a portion of First Edition of Espanola, Florida. The second option would be to deny the requested vacation. Give us reasons for the denial, if you can, if you choose to do that. And then the last one would be to continue it to a time and date certain for something that we have overlooked, and we'll bring that back to you at the next meeting or as soon thereafter as we can. With that, I'll close, await any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Mangle?
Yeah, just the mechanics of it. If you go look this plat up 6 months from now, those lines are all gone.
Yes, sir.
Is that what I'll find? If I
Yes,
go-
sir.
Okay.
That's how it should work.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
Question?
Did they give specific reason why they want to vacate the plat?
No, we do know that there is some future development that's coming. This is with Radiant. It's certainly an option. I think I may have talked about it in the technical staff report or somewhere there that you could just as well accomplish this through a replat. I think this intended cleanup, as we've discussed it with them as the applicant, is that just as well, this cleans the record before you do that replat. And so from a corporate standpoint, this gives them a clean slate. We've had other companies that have done this as well, rather than doing the replat. It's in some ways, I think they consider it a cleaner process for us to vacate first, and then they'll come back with something potentially in the future. It may be that this will be nothing in the end, because this is kind of at that far south end of their development and adjacent. Certainly, I think you may have heard some or seen some correspondence from Mr. Hadid. We are all realizing the significance of Old Brick Road, and so this has that kind of southern terminus feel to it. And we've in a short version, we've heard nothing from Radiant about future plans for this other than just this vacation.
So I couldn't find the documents, and I was looking last night. This area is surrounded by unincorporated, it looked like.
To the south, and basically, yes.
I think you can't annex into anything else.
No.
It didn't look like. And then the Hunter family that lives in the front of it, they were notified, but didn't.
Yes.
It looked like no one contested it.
No.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Mangle?
None.
Okay. At this time, I'll open it for public comment. Does anybody wish to address the commission on this item? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the adoption of a resolution to vacate a portion of Plat A, portion of the town of Espanola subdivision, and a portion of the plat of First Edition to Espanola, Florida subdivision in the AC and MH1 zoning districts.
Motion by Commissioner Hanson,
Second.
second by Commissioner O'Brien. Any final comments or? Seeing none, we'll call a vote. All those in favor signify with aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, 8C, this is the review of a draft resolution of intent to use the uniform method of collecting non-ad valorem special assessments for beach renourishment in the unincorporated county. Ms. Petito will present this item.
Well, good morning, and thank you for being here and allowing me to provide you an update of Flagler County's beach management plan in consideration of the resolution of the intent to use the uniform method of collection for non-ad valorem assessments. Just want to start by saying that I truly appreciate the partnership and the collaboration that we've had with residents on the Barrier Island throughout this process. And over the past few months, we've worked really hard on public engagement to share where we are with the plan. We were able to gather some valuable input in putting this together. You'll notice there are some updates since we last met, so we'll go ahead and get started. Here's where we are, what we've been able to accomplish since June of 2024. There is some significant work. This is something that I had showed you previously with all of the work that the county staff has put together on this process moving forward. And we continue to gather more information as we move forward. As you know, we did a series of community outreach, town hall forums, meetings. There is more work to be done. We also had conducted the property owner survey. Again, a lot of this is information that you've already seen, but for the benefit of the public, I just want to show it again. We did conduct the beach nourishment survey. This is a look at what was sent out to the property owners in the affected area. Here's a summary of the findings of that survey. 96% of the public were aware of the current challenges facing Flagler's coastline. 90% felt that beach preservation was important to their overall quality of life. 93% felt that the need was urgent for a structured beach management plan. 80% felt that erosion control and dune and beach renourishment needed the most attention. And then overall, you had 75% that say that they supported some sort of a contribution to beach management. And then it kind of just breaks it down, the various amounts. So when we looked at the initial construction, again, this is not new, but for the entire coastline, it's just under $105 million. We do have portions coming from the federal government as well as the state. If you focus on the far right, the local contribution for the entire coastline would be 37.5 million. And that's largely, or it is in the unincorporated area of Flagler County. I think that this slide is a little misleading, as I've stated before. It gives a sense that this is really only for the construction activities. Throughout the entire beach management project, we've committed a lot of resources at the county in the way of labor and expenditures, which includes, acquiring easements, doing surveys, programming and public outreach. The resources don't only include staff within administration, but also the county attorney's office, our communications team, engineering, our GIS, drones, our budget, our procurement, and even TDC with their Dodge the Dune campaign. So we do have a gap, though, of the 37.5 million in the construction aspect. And here's a look at that local funding strategy of where we hope to fill that gap. As you know, we had applied for state grants to work on program funding in that reach, which we anticipate somewhere around $15 million. We have set aside in the current fiscal year 25 budget $5 million. However, that does leave a shortfall of $17.5 million. What we're looking at here is for the construction of Reach 3, and we anticipate the timeline need for that is going to be in the next 2 to 3 years. So good news is we have got 2 or 3 years to kind of fill in that gap. And then once it's constructed, we have an obligation or hopefully a desire to renourish that and maintain it once it's constructed. So when you look at the total breakdown, this is based on 6-year project intervals. So the top portion of this is how much money would be required at every 6 years. And the bottom segment is how it's broken out for the equivalent annual cost per section. So when we're looking at this and we're focusing on the unincorporated Flagler County, we know that we need to capture about $8.2 million annually so that we have the $49 million available at the time that we're going to do the renourishment. So again, looking at the local funding strategy and how do we anticipate funding this? As I mentioned, the renourishment would be every 6 years. There is potential eligibility for DEP, especially as we work to identify additional critically eroded areas. The local share is $8.2 million. Again, this is just for the northern 10-plus miles in the unincorporated Flagler County. And then we've already established $5 million annually, although future funding is going to be subject to budget approval, and we have quite a ways before we even get to that point with moving forward with fiscal year 26 and then the following years. But we know that we've got a shortfall. We're trying to fill that gap of 3.2 million, which seems to be the target that we're working towards. So when we look at the public access parks within that section of the unincorporated area, Flagler County has 6 county parks. There's also State Park with Washington Oaks. When you look at the amount of money projected or estimated to be needed in that area annually, it's somewhere around $1.7 million. That section of public access does equate to just under 21% of the project cost. But I think that that does provide justification of a general fund contribution to support the publicly owned beach access areas within the stretch of the project. So when we look at potential funding opportunities, again, this is not new. This is something we've talked about for well over a year. We are looking at tourist development tax. We are looking at potentially a special assessment or tax, whether it's in the way of a municipal service benefit unit, MSBU, or a taxing unit, which would be the MSTU. Other sources would be general revenue, whether it's the small county local option half-cent sales tax. Also, we talked about possibility of carving out a dedicated millage, not a millage increase, but out of the existing millage. And then once we have funding established, it's certainly something that we can go out and bond should we need to. The bottom two are more related to disaster recovery, so that we can go after FEMA and state DEM dollars post-disaster recovery. So that doesn't change. We'll continue to do that. However, in the funding mechanism that we're looking at, there will be a need for some local match dollars. So even if we do have a declared disaster at the local level, there's still an obligation for about a 12.5% of those costs. So just looking at the agenda item that you had approved earlier, adding that in for our outside consulting agency to do the analysis, we're estimating that that local match on our portion is probably going to be somewhere close to about $2 million. So just to give you an idea of the amount of money that's required at the local level following post-storm. So when we look at potential funding opportunities, again, this is a slide that you've seen before, where we're trying to work towards the funding gap. What we had established here was potentially the use of a carve-out of millage, not a millage increase. If we were to look at like a tenth of a mil reallocation, it would give us about 1.5 million, which would leave the remaining gap of 1.7 in the way of an assessment or tax, whether it's an MSBU or MSTU. We do have just under 6,400 parcels within the unincorporated area. When we're looking at the total project cost, it's not putting it all on the people that live within that area because that total local share is about 8.2. What we were looking at applying is the 1.7 million. And then if you look at this slide, this is kind of gives you the outline. We've got the 4 different project reaches, but also looking at the green bar along the bottom, that gives you the proposed area of the northern 10 plus MSBU unincorporated area. So this would be from the southern border of the town of Marineland to the northern border of Beverly Beach, from mean high water line to the east side of the Intercoastal Waterway. This is what we are referring to as the unincorporated area of the Barrier Island. So just to be clear, if you live in Flagler Beach, Beverly Beach, Marineland, Bunnell, or Palm Coast, you are not part of this MSBU. Regardless of what your mailing address may say, Palm Coast does not exist on the Barrier Island. So just want to make sure we have that clear. So as we're looking at the MSBU benefit analysis, there is a benefit to the local property, and it could be established by actually the cost of the project itself. There's prior court cases that have already established that for us. When we look at the benefit analysis details, supporting property values, paying for a dune and beach renourishment directly benefits the property owner by protecting their property from erosion and storm damage, thus preserving and potentially increasing their property values. It also provides coastal protection and enhanced dune, replenish beaches, provide better protection against storm surge and erosion, making it a more attractive and safer place to live. It also improves the recreational capacity because everybody knows that a well-maintained beach can improve recreational opportunities which further enhance the quality of life. and the desirability of their property. It also increases the beach environment and habitat protection. This is an area that's called out in the county strategic plan where we are looking to protect and manage our natural resources, and that also includes protection and renourishment of the beaches and the dunes. So when we look at the assessment benefit area, as I mentioned previously, it is the area between the town of Marineland and the town of Beverly Beach. And then when we move forward and we're looking at the methodology, looking at the property value, properties with a higher property value will end up paying more. It's really about their location on the barrier island. Looking at properties that are closer to the beach, they likely have higher property values, therefore they would end up paying more. When we look at the benefit received, we are considering a flat base rate applied to every property within that section of the barrier island that we identified. And then we're looking at the assignment of weighting the benefit. So 50% would end up coming from property value protection. The other 50% would be that base rate. So when we had previously shown this, this is really the combination of how we got there, splitting the 1.7 million that would be needed between the 50% base rate and 50% in value. So in looking at the different assessments, the group by cost, this is looking at the total parcels that we have. The largest percentage is somewhere between an assessment of $151 to $300. And then looking at the bottom table, it seems that the average property value among the barrier island is somewhere around $407,000 in property value, which would equate to just under $250 in the form of an assessment. And then when we looked at funding, creating this MSBU, what portion of that actually comes from the folks on the barrier island? So we know that we needed that $8.2 million at the bottom. When we look at the collection of tourist development tax, our portion of half-cent sales tax, as well as carving out the 1 mil allocation, collectively that's about $6.5 million. It's estimated that folks within the Northern 10 MSBU area contribute about 2.2 million of that in the way of contribution to tourism tax, half-cent sales tax, and the millage. And then looking at the bottom, that's how we get to the 1.7 million to kind of close that gap. So out of the 8.2, essentially folks on the barrier island contribute about 3.9 million of that expense, which is about 48%. And again, this is the language that we have shown you previously about the formation and under what authority and how this MSBU will cover routine maintenance, as well as any emergency declaration. It'll all be in accordance with state, federal, local acts, statutes, and regulatory procedures. And then when we look at the top scenario, which is the initial construction of the beach in Reach 3, and then again, it just kind of shows you what the total cost of construction being $57.5 million. We do have a state contribution, some grant funding, and then funding that we've been able to allocate. It brings that gap down to about 17.5 when we need this in 2 years. So by proposing the MSBU collections, we are estimating it to be about 3.4 million, and then the reallocation of millage at 3 million, and then the county's contribution being consistent with what we put in fiscal year 25, and assuming that we would carry that through in 26 and 27, it kind of closes that gap a little bit, but we still have $1 million gap towards the construction. Today's presentation has nothing to do with approving the funding. It's really just for the intent to use that uniform collection. I just want to give the background story for the sake of the audience and the public. The bottom scenario is when we look at the maintenance, ongoing maintenance over the 6-year interval, that amount will end up closing the gap. So one thing, as a follow-up to the last meeting, we did start the legal process moving forward with the concept that we had shared with you publicly. The MSBU, as previously proposed, would have included the base rate for the benefit received along with the property protection based on that property value. When we looked at this and we were working with legal, it doesn't appear that that's going to be the best case moving forward. So it is a little bit of a difference in what we have previously shown. But what we are looking at doing is splitting the amount between an MSBU, which would cover the base rate, the base benefit, and then the MSTU portion would actually be the section that we calculate based on property values. So we recognize that, this is a slight change in what we've previously presented. This new hybrid method does have us collecting the same amount. So the amount required does not change. It's just the formality of how we go about collecting it. So if you look on the left side, the MSBU, the amount is based on the benefit received. Everybody, it's an assessment. Everybody would be paying the same amount in that assessment. It is considered non-ad valorem, and it needs to be established either prior to the end of December, which is the target that we're aiming for, but there is some wiggle room that could have us doing this up until March. Looking at the MSTU portion, again, that's the amount based on property value. Everybody would pay a different amount, again, because it's based on their taxable value. That is considered an ad valorem tax within that area. And this needs to be established prior to July. So as I mentioned before, it's just kind of laying out the process moving forward. I just wanted to give you that update as we continue to work through this. So looking at the significant work since we last met, I recognize it was only last month, but we've already got a lot of accomplishments, already significant work. So we did create the public notice. Again, this is just for the notice of intent to use the uniform method of collection using the tax bill. The approval of the notice of intent is scheduled for December 2nd. So today's meeting does not levy any amount. Even December 2nd does not levy any amount. It's really just for the approval of the intent. We'll continue to work through this as part of our budget process, and that'll be considered during the, once we start meeting in December all the way through July of next year. But we did, as I mentioned, we did start the legal review for that rationale nexus test. We already created the public notice. We have to have a minimum of 4. We actually have 5 consecutive advertisements going out to the public, notifying them of our intent. And then we've also looking at the evaluation of the cost and best method of collection. This is where the MSBU and MSTU model has now appeared. We do need to work with the property appraiser. We had reached out to get some cost estimates on what it would cost for the collection of fees from the property appraiser as well as the tax collector. And then we also need to take into account the estimated 4% reduction for people that pay in November rather than March. We also are evaluating the long-term local funding strategy. That's the tourist development tax, half-cent sales tax, and the general fund millage. I did pull together some information I had shared with the chair looking at that, but again, there is no determination made today on actual funding. I know that the operations and maintenance manual for the Army Corps Coastal Storm Risk Management Project that was provided to Flagler Beach. I believe they're meeting tomorrow, our staff along with the Army Corps with the city of Flagler Beach to discuss the obligations that the city has moving forward with the ongoing maintenance of the Army Corps section within Flagler Beach. We also are starting to work on the FEMA Cat B and Cat G estimates based on those impacts from Hurricane Milton. Part of that was the late submittal that we received from FOF, which came in on November 1st. But we are looking and working towards that already. Following our last meeting, I did notify by letter our coastal community partners, that's Flagler Beach, Beverly Beach, and Marineland, of today's meeting, letting them know that they do have an opportunity to join with this process, that today it's not done and over with, that there's still plenty of time for them to be involved. And then our next county commission meeting scheduled for November 4th. And that's really, again, today is just the consideration and approval of concept. We have more work to be done. So looking at next steps and timeline, we're going to continue with that legal review. Now that we've kind of changed the modeling a little bit, I do think we need to go back out and continue our community outreach between now and July of next year. We also have time for the creation and adoption of the MSBU, MSTU ordinance. We also need to create and adopt interlocal agreements with both the tax collector and property appraiser. You've got your county commission meeting on December 2nd, which is the public hearing for the MSBU consideration. Then we will notify Department of Revenue as required by law. And then we have to send out the notice to taxpayers on the benefit received. And then we're going to include this in the budget process, as I mentioned. We start in December, we'll finalize it next summer. And then we'll begin to do the collection of MSBU, MSTU revenues November of next year, and we can continue our discussions with the municipalities. And that pretty much ends the presentation.
Great, thank you. Yep, open up for questions.
Yeah, just you've covered this in the briefing very well, but just for my own benefit and because I'm slow on some of this stuff, but for this fiscal year, which started October 1st, which we've already approved, and that goes through next October 1st, we've committed $5 million out of funds that's already been approved. So anything beyond that for fiscal year 26 will have to be approved in the budget process. So if we approve this, what we're heading towards on December 2nd, that doesn't lock those dollars in yet, right? It won't lock it in until the budget process goes through next year.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. You're not approving any funding at this point. If you recall last year, it's similar to what's done in Nassau County every year. We brought before you last year kind of that same concept, the creation of an MSBU, and we kind of identified, it could be for public safety, it could be for EMS, it could be for roads, it could be for stormwater. It's a tool in the toolbox. It is not obligating this board to any financial commitment. It is just putting it out there that it is under consideration, the intent to use this tool. It doesn't mean that you even have to move forward with it, but there is a requirement that we need to notify the state. So we're just going through the formal steps to make that tool available should the board decide to do that with the preparation of the budget.
And just my last point on that, and so any additional funding coming from individual homeowners or the ad valorem tax or whatever, that couldn't start until the start of the next fiscal year. And you talked about January, December, January, March. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
So it would be next year. So if the board were to adopt this and we were to implement it, you won't start collecting those dollars until October 1st is when your budget comes out.
Right.
Most people pay their taxes or pay their bills November.
Right.
So essentially, that time frame is when people would start paying.
That's my only point, that that's, and we're talking about January of 26, before any more than the $5 million, unless we get some grants, is going to be available. Okay, you've covered that, but for my own benefit, I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Petito?
I have questions.
Go ahead.
No. Greg, did you- Okay. I have questions. And maybe it's really for Mr. Hadid probably. So there was some public outreach via email and calls this weekend. And so I know, just to kind of talk about it, and I'm hoping we workshop this in between now and December 2nd. I'm interested in the legal review portion. The public costs, I know you gave us the slide that said here the ad valorem generally could be applied to the public access parks, right? The 1.7 million, the Point Mill allocation would generally go to that, correct? Is that what you're seeing?
I think what I was trying to say is there's a direct connection between preserving and protecting a public asset,
right?
that it makes a correlation that's where it could be applied, yes.
So when we do that, the tourism tax in the statute says to finance any kind of beach restoration, it would have to be where there is public access. as those users relate to the physical preservation of the beach. So how do we see I know in Reach 3, and stop me if I'm wrong, Reach 3 is primarily dune restoration, correct?
It'll be both. We have a permit modification being considered, or actually needs to be worked on, for not just the dune, but also the building back of the beach. So it would include both, not just dune, it would be the beach.
I think what I want to see is how we intend to apply each bucket into what reach. So that I know that some of this is considered, and stop me, Al, and you can answer this, Al, is some of this private beach, private dune?
We don't have any private beaches.
Well, go ahead.
There are parcels, privately owned parcels that extend all the way to the mean high water line or the erosion control line, depending which of the two are in place. We don't have that uniformly in place yet. But nevertheless, we do have that privately owned. However, the county took the step based on the state statute in 2018 to declare customary public use of the entirety of its beachfront, which means that the entirety of the 18 miles is public beach, regardless of private ownership.
So I read that ordinance, and I think maybe that we'll take this offline because I realize that today is just to draft the resolution. I read that ordinance, and it says that this ordinance pertains to the dry sand portion of the beach between the mean high water line and the toe of the dune. So what is the toe of the dune?
The toe of the dune is where customary use
Stops.
begins.
Begins? Or it
Yeah.
says here, it says, this ordinance pertains to the dry sand portion of the beach between the mean high water line and the toe of the dune.
It's really referring to, commonly referred to as towel space, where people can
Right.
use the
Would it
beach.
include the actual dune?
Well, we would never allow public to walk
On
on the
a
dunes
dune.
because it's against not only state law, but our own ordinances.
But would that leave the dune private? Not in reach of customary use? I guess those are questions we'll
Well,
work out as we
you-
go through this.
You can't, you
Because-
can't have a beach without the dunes.
I think we'll I'll meet with you separately because I know that today this is not to figure out exactly how we apply that, but I think there's some confusion in that seems to be going on, like in Fort Walton Beach recently, and how the customary use is applied. So I think that's my concern. The tourism tax specifically states in the statute it's to be used for restoration where there's public access. We're talking about applying 0.1 mil, and we're saying that that the 0.1 mil is where the public access would be used. And so I'm wondering how the tourism tax gets applied if we're allocating two buckets to where the public access is.
I would just say this. The declaration of customary use makes the entirety of our beach a public beach, even though portions of it may be privately owned. There is indeed public access to, by law, to every bit of 18 miles. It is naturally prohibited that anyone erect any barrier or attempt to hinder or impede any public use of that beach.
Yeah, my concern is always going to come down to how the buckets of different money is applied, the tourism, and I think we'll just have to work it out. And I'd like to, hopefully, we'll have a workshop in between now and then to see what the legal review discussion is. So,
Other questions? You got more?
no.
Okay, Commissioner Hanson, no other questions?
No, we've been working on this for 8 years, and the making the beaches all public was one of the big steps that we took, so that the funding could be spread. So Yeah, I encourage you, Leanne, to get with the lawyer
Yeah.
on that, because it's
Yeah,
it's really
I'm
pretty
gonna
clear to
show
me,
him.
but I've been working on it for 8 years,
I
too.
know, but I
So-
would
So,
talk specifically about in Reach 3, some of it with you.
We'll talk about workshop at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, workshop.
Commissioner O'Brien, anything? All right. The only comments I'll have is I know, again, at the end of the week, I got quite a few emails and discussions, one-on-one with the administrator just to get answers, answers to those was, I think that this is not the end of the process, this meeting here today. It's really just to get the MSBU portion by statute moving along. We've got to make these specific steps by the end of December in order for this to be a viable tool in the toolbox. We are still going to be working all the way through July on the funding portion. And I guess a question is for today, are you looking at a consensus, and maybe this is for Al, are we voting on this concept and approving the concept of the MSBU to move it forward, or we just need consensus from the board to move this forward so that we will approve it in December?
I think it's consensus to move forward, but I would also ask the county administrator to weigh in as to her intent.
Okay.
And also just to provide any guidance on the resolution, the draft resolution that's we've presented, if there's anything you'd like to see changed or.
Okay, so I guess I'll open it up if there's any potential changes to the verbiage in the resolution that you wanted to discuss up here.
Did we
Commissioner
have
Sullivan.
both MSBU's and the other one in the language prior to today?
no, that's a change.
How does that affect things?
If I could, what's in front of you today is just the MSBU. The MSTU will not come before you until sometime prior to July 1st. So for today's consideration, it is only the MSBU and the intent to use that uniform collection through the tax bill.
The MSTU has a different set of requirements separate
And it
from
has
this.
to be
Yes.
approved.
right.
Okay. So that goes along with your point, my point, that there's still work to be done
Yeah,
here.
absolutely,
Over the next,
absolutely.
Over the next, okay, no.
And if we don't make any changes today, then this is the language. Like if we workshop and come up with changes, say at a workshop in a week, does it have to be renoticed, those changes, or can those changes be accepted and moved to December?
The publication is already out there and it's very vague, intended to be vague. What'll come back to you, we can discuss it at a workshop. If you'd like to have one scheduled, we can schedule one between now and December 2nd to work on the resolution, but you have time. It doesn't affect the advertisement, which is already out there.
So you just wanted to make sure there was consensus to move this forward, so we're not wasting any more time, staff time. You get a clear identification from the commission that this is a concept to move forward to December and continue to work on it.
Correct.
Okay. At this point, yes, sir.
Just, I'm not speaking for Commissioner O'Brien, but we'll be gone December 2nd. You'll have two new commission members here. So I would suggest that if you're going to have a workshop prior to the December 2nd meeting, you do it after November 19th. So they get involved with it, because it's going to be their
Point
their
taken.
stuff.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. At this time, I'll open this item up for public comment. If you would like to speak on this item, come up, state your name. You have 3 minutes. I was almost ready to close it down. You got to move quick.
Hello, Steve Daly,
Good
Flagler
morning.
Beach. I just have a question. Is this the first time we've ever used an MSBU? And if it is, are we opening the door to, if someone benefits the most, we're going to tax them more? I mean, I don't understand why we would do this on this. We don't do it on schools. If you benefit the most and have kids in schools, you should have an MSBU. I don't understand. if you still spread it out to everybody in the county has the beach. I mean, the county always, and the cities like Palm Coast, push a lot saying about the Flagler Beach they get to use or have or advertise for, and then they don't want to pay. You're still, those few people that live in this non-city areas are going to pay more for their beach renourishment. We should all pay for their beach renourishments because it's all 18 miles of the same county. So if we still spread it out more, they pay less. And you start doing this special tax because we want this project, you're going to do it on everything for someone who wants something more or benefits more. I still don't understand. You benefit more, so you pay more. There's a lot of services I don't use. I don't know why I pay taxes for them. It'd be the same thing. So I just have a little question on that, and still why we didn't incorporate the actual cities on the beachfront from the beginning, because everybody comes to our beach, Flagler Beach. It's not, they come from the county to our beach. And so you didn't put them in the discussions from the beginning. You wait till after the fact to have workshops. Doesn't make any sense. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll address those at the end of public comment.
Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Kate Thomas, Casey Colony. I've been involved in terms of attending these workshops since prior to June, but specifically to this topic since June 2024. I attended the 3 June and 10 June presentations by the consultant. My recollection is that an MSTU had been discussed, and then we were told that it was not to be used, it could not be used. So then subsequently, I also went to the public outreach presentations and didn't hear anything about an MSTU. It's the first time I'm hearing the MSTU yet again. So I think it's questionable how you could move forward on something when this model is a brand new model that's being introduced to you for evaluation and consideration, as well as us community members. I just have a couple questions that I would encourage you to also inquire about. How many respondents were there to the survey? Because in the slide, I only saw percentages. I'd like to know how many people actually responded. How will HOAs, condo associations, and commercial properties be assessed, if assessed, in this unincorporated area? Again, why are tourists and other county residents who do use the beach not being assessed? I think that there should be introduced a maximum limit to which a property value can be assessed, since it's being utilized in this formula for valuation. Commissioner Pennington, I encourage you to continue your inquiry because I think you were asking incredibly important questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Marie Elena Calabrese, and I live in Sea Colony. I am very confused. I don't quite understand everything, so I'll be honest. I don't understand why, if the beach is public, which I agree, everybody can use the beach. So I don't understand why the people who live on the barrier island are being asked to pay more money because everyone is using the beach anyway. I don't see why we are being penalized. I mean, we could look at it the other way. We're being penalized enough when they come and they clog up our streets and dirty the beaches and leave all their junk behind. You know, we haven't addressed that. The other thing, I don't know if it pertains to this, but I don't understand, and I wish someone would explain it, why up at Marineland they have these huge boulders that protects, and it does protect. I've watched them for 30 some odd years. Why don't we use a system like that along our entire beachfront and stop using, and then put sand on top? Because every time we're just spending money, tons of money, and it's going to disappear. I was told years ago that this was only a stopgap, that nothing was ever going to stay there. So has anyone ever thought about why they have boulders and the rest of the beach does not? And their beach doesn't disappear like ours does? I know it's a strange question, but I've been dying to ask it for many years. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Richard Hamilton, Island Estates. I'm glad we don't have to take too much time today trying to argue over this because there's still more time to go. And each meeting we come to seems to be a little bit more another development. You know, we didn't talk about MSTUs before, although the principle is the same. I know since the last meeting when I came and spoke to you about some things, you've had various letters. I know my association president sent some. My colleagues in the Hammock Civic Association have sent some questions. I was hoping we might have heard some discussion of those questions and answers today. That's still to come. I'm glad we still got workshops and things like that. I still vehemently dispute some of the assumptions that you're making, and that again will come. But you're right here, that half of the assessment will be correlated with each property's volume. And the rationale is that more valuable properties receive a greater benefit through flood damage reduction. Milton showed us that flood damage reduction is completely independent from what happens at the beach. So that's one of my big issues, that we'll be questioning that rationale as we go forward. The flat rate isn't really an issue. What are we talking, $160 per property? But what I do notice when I started to apply this to individual properties, and I think you should have your staff give you some examples of individual properties. We have some properties with a value on the Intracoastal Waterway that are the same or excess of those on the beach. We have commercial properties up and down. If you look at the taxation of the Hammock Beach Resort and Golf Course, it's not much more than one of our larger single-family houses, and yet its frontage on the ocean is that much greater. There seems to me a great disparity on that. So I think you should look at that for your next workshop. And I also think you should look at perhaps the results of Milton. We're fortunate it wasn't that severe here, but it did have flooding impacts. It had some beach erosion. We've seen that there. Is the equilibration theory working? What did happen to the sand in Flagler Beach that went out to the ocean? Is it still there? I know we were flying the LiDAR drones. I haven't seen what the results were of that. Or is it like it happened 2 or 3 years ago that the sand actually started moving south and reappeared in Daytona Beach? That's a fundamental question that I think you now have an opportunity to look at the assumptions behind the beach management plan, and are they still valid? Hopefully they are, but I think you should look at it before you make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back. All right, Ms. Petito, did you want to address some of these, some of the other MSBUs that are in the county?
Certainly.
Go ahead, and then I'll remind you of the other ones that I wrote down.
I'll try to remember everything, and I may need help from county attorney, but we have several MSBUs in Flagler County that we've used, whether it's in Daytona North, Bimini Gardens, the Marine Land Acres Drainage Project was also MSBU, or one that we use. So the use of an MSBU is not new to Flagler County. It is something that we've used before. The difference, I think the correlation was schools don't do it. Schools aren't allowed to do it. That's why they don't use that method. So there's not everything we do can apply the same way to the school system. I don't know if there was more I needed to say there, but the thought of using an MSTU or MSBU for this project is not new news. This is something, if you recall, Stan with PFM, who came and gave the presentation early on, he talked about the two of them. When he was presenting it, he felt that we could do the one as just the benefit unit, which is the method that we started working on when our own attorney's office weighed in based on consultation with the attorney that is with Neighbors Gimlin, who does the Nassau County. Yes, when Nassau County originally did this, they used the MSBU method. Back in 2010, they switched it over. So now it is a different method that they're recommending. It doesn't mean that you can't do the MSBU and MSTU. Again, the amount that we're collecting is not changing. We're not using two different methods to now collect more than we need. It just is the makeup of how you're collecting the same amount of money. It's just that you're not doing it with one method. It's now split between two. We can't use boulders on the beach. We've talked about this over and over again. We went up to Tallahassee with Commissioner Hansen, met with the head of DEP. The use of what we're doing is what got approved. You have to go through various environmental studies and regulatory agencies, and at the end of the day, they determine what we can do. We can't just go out there and do whatever we want in the way of boulders, concrete, seawall, jetties, wave attenuators. We have to get a permit. It's regulatory. This is the method in which they're recommending that we move forward. There was some mention of, how come we're excluding the cities? That is not the case. We've been talking about this for months, and I'll even go back to July 15th. The city of Flagler Beach reached out to me asking for what topics do we want to discuss. The same day, I brought it to you at one of our meetings on July 15th, and I emailed them that night while at one of our meetings, telling them, number one, beach renourishment. Let's talk about roads and impact fees. Let's talk about stormwater and the issues that we're seeing across the county, as well as the cities. And then we asked for a status on an easement on an economic development prospect. That was relayed to the city clerk. They talked about it in Flagler Beach on July 25th, and then again on August 22nd. The city of Flagler Beach came back with the recommendation, even though we had picked 5 different dates that we could meet. Flagler Beach said, let's wait until after the election. So it's not because we are purposely excluding anybody. We've tried to bring them in. We've tried to bring them to the table to talk about it. We have no authority, jurisdiction within their community to impose anything. That's why we need them to be at the table. That's why we're only looking at and considering today unincorporated Flagler County. I don't know if I've missed anything.
There was the number of respondents to the survey.
Oh, sorry. We had 807 respondents to the survey. When we looked at the nexus between what translates to a valid survey, and I had it on the previous slide, and if I could, I'll pull it back up from when I presented it at our last meeting, when we were trying to determine whether or not a survey was valid. Let me just pull it up real quick, sorry. We had 807 received, but when we were evaluating and creating it, we wanted to make sure that it had statistical validity. In other words, the degree to which the survey results can be considered accurate and reliable moving forward. When we were looking at our target audience of 6775 with 99% confidence level and a 5% margin of error, what was determined was the ideal number of surveys we needed to collect was 604. We actually exceeded it and received 807 from the community. So therefore, we felt that there's a high degree of confidence in the survey results and that it reflects the opinions of the target audience.
And then finally on HOAs and tourism.
I don't know if I missed something with that, but the properties, we still have a lot of due diligence to do, and we're still working through the process. Right now, we were looking at the base rate, and then we were looking at the property value. If the property has a value, it will be receiving a benefit, and therefore it will be receiving a base rate and a tax on the property's value. So nobody's being excluded. Again, it's based on the property's value.
And I guess the tourism component is through TDC, through the allocation.
And right now, the TDC allocation, although we carved out $2 million out of the fund to put it towards this project, moving forward, we still need to determine. So we're not talking today about, 2 pennies or 2 of the 5. That's going to be a discussion that we need to have moving forward. But I believe, based on the comments of customary use, in that we have a public beach, that tourists use the entire beach, that they're not segregated to just going to Flagler Beach or to these, county or state parks. Many properties have beach access at the end of the road where tourists, go there. They're vacation rentals. A lot of them exist in the hammock, and the beach is there, and tourists are using it. So.
All right. I think that covered all the questions. Thank you. So I'll bring it back to the dais for consensus. If there's any changes to the language, let me know. We can talk about changes to the language. Otherwise, we'll just give. I'll ask everybody to verbally give their approval for the resolution, so we have a kind of a head count on consensus.
I think we should move forward.
Okay, Commissioner Pennington.
I'm okay with moving it forward if we're going to workshop it.
Okay. Commissioner
Forward at this
Sullivan,
point.
Commissioner O'Brien.
I just want to say a couple things since this will probably
Absolutely.
be my last time to
Sure.
comment on it from the dais. Well, first of all, I wanted to thank everyone for the thoughtful and well-reasoned arguments and the emails that we received. I must tell you, serving over the 8 years of serving as a commissioner, that's probably the best series of emails that I've received, well-written and thoughtful, and again, a lot of facts. So much appreciated. I think about the famous economist, Dr. Thomas Sowell. Something that always sticks with me when you're up here trying to make policy decisions is he said, there's really no solutions to any policy problems. There's only a series of trade-offs. This is not a perfect solution, but if you acknowledge the trade-offs, it helps you to make decisions and keep projects moving forward. And I think that's what we're trying to do here today. And lastly, I would just say, in thinking about this whole thing and all the work we've done on it, the staff presentations, the community meetings, the vetting, the legal work, in my opinion, I think this is it's an equitable, and it's a legal process. I think it's a well-reasoned and sustainable plan. I think that it's been properly presented by staff to the stakeholders in the community, the property owners, and the citizens. And my hope is that the resolution process keeps moving forward, and that the resolution gets approved in December. So, yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Appreciate that. And I'll acknowledge my consensus along with the other 4. So continue to work on this as one of the tools in your toolbox. All right. We will move on. Let me find my... So in 8D is consideration of a resolution to form the Flagler County Industrial Development Authority, establishing a process for appointing the 5 members of the authority and establishing their terms in office. So this is requested by Amy Lukasik, Tourism Director, and Dolores Key, Economic Development Manager.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Amy Lukasik, Tourism Development Director. I'm going to share a few slides with you today to just refresh your memory on how we got here. So part of our strategic plan, one of the Economic Vitality's objectives is to research, develop, and implement options for economic development incentive programs. And we first came before you with this concept back in January of 2024, in March of 2024, and then again in June of 2024. For this incentive option, we also had the two gentlemen come at one of the workshops, one that represented the IDA and one that represented the client. This slide may look familiar. This is when we proposed this option. The County Commission may create an industrial development authority under Florida Statute 159.44. The Industrial Development Authority, otherwise known as the IDA, they serve as the initial entry point for the Industrial Development Revenue Bond application process. And IDAs assess the proposed project's capability of producing tangible economic benefits in the form of new capital investment, new employment, or a combination of both in a community. The authority recommends projects for the approval to the Board of County Commissioners, and then the County Commission ultimately approves the project. Today, we are seeking approval of a resolution to form the IDA, establish a process for appointing 5 members and their terms of office. We'll come back to you at a future time with additional items surrounding this that I'll go over towards the end. This is a breakdown of the process flow that the IDA and the Commission work towards. And I wanted to remind you that when we presented 9 initial options for incentives, none of them were attached to general fund. That was very important, and this one is no different. So here's a sample of a typical fee structure of an IDA and how they are funded. They receive a application fee, and again, this is just a typical example. The IDA can make their own application fee. They also make their money on financing fees. And so anything over 10 million, it's 0.25%. And those funds that are collected, they then can use to finance economic development projects. As a reminder, again, some neighboring industrial development authorities, Jacksonville, Clay County, Putnam, St. John's, and Volusia. And last year when we were researching this project, we asked St. John's County for a list of some of their IDA bonds, and this is a list. The benefits to the company utilizing the bonds, it's long-term financing at a lower than prime interest rate. Rates can be even lower due to tax-exempt status of the bond. Finances 100% of the project cost if project is less than 10 million. And project vetting process through Florida Commerce sponsored project, JAX USA. And also, just to give you an example, so the last project there, so it was 30 million. So if they had the typical structure that I showed here of 0.25, then that 30 million project, then they would have collected an additional 75,000. So our recommendation to the board is to have 5 members with a variety of background, areas of expertise, subject matter experts. When we looked at other IDAs, they comprised of these types of categories, so someone in financing or some sort of accounting, CPA background, attorney, a commercial banker, commercial real estate broker, and a business leader or business owner. So what we're looking for today is approval of the resolution, and I wanted to bring to your attention that we did make some red lines, and I put a copy on your desk or there at your seat. We did eliminate item number 4. We didn't feel that was necessary to form the to approve the resolution. We also added the suggested composition of members and suggested staggered terms. And again, they will appoint their own chair, secretary, treasurer. And also we changed item which is now number 6, that the Economic Development Manager will serve as the liaison pending the IDA organization setup and appointment of the officers. So we are looking for that approval of this drafted resolution, the one that's redlined there on your desk, to allow us to move forward with opening up the application process. We're suggesting let it to be open for about 120 days, especially since the holidays. We also need time to do a lot of public outreach and informational sessions to the business community through our network of business leaders, so we can find those 5 people or more to bring before the board. And so the next step after that is we would bring those 5 or bring applications before you. Hopefully we get a lot of interest. And then the board at the time then will select the 5 in the categories. And then we will work with them to draft up their bylaws. And then perhaps then we can come back before the board again in a form of a workshop so that you can review the bylaws and have open discussion, and also any other additional important items that you may want to make sure the IDA does or does not do on behalf of the board. And with that, that concludes my presentation.
All right, thank you. Questions? Commissioner Hanson.
So once the board is established, they don't do anything unless somebody comes to them and says,
Correct.
we'd like to borrow money, and then the process starts.
Correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Pennington?
First, I'm grateful to see the qualifications added because the agenda I was working with didn't have that in there. 2, I think that I spent a lot of time reading through meetings in St. John's and Volusia. I think they have to have a Form 6, this board. I think that, I don't know if that needs to be in this resolution or not, but I think that they're now required to fill out financials. And then 3rd, I noticed that all the boards are required to have an IDA, CPA, and attorney. Will that just be worked out later on? Who will be the CPA and attorney for these? For
Yes,
this authority?
I think, prior to any applications or valid projects yet, they will appoint a treasurer to keep the books. But then hopefully, once it's up and running, then they would outsource when they need a CPA for tax auditing, as well as an attorney.
So those costs for the CPA and attorney are taken on by the applicant, correct? Or is that something that we're going to absorb?
No, we would not absorb it. It would be a cost through the IDA, through those fees that they receive, that I was showing those examples.
Okay. Commissioner Sullivan?
Just a minor thing. The way it reads on our 8D, it says appointment, which is kind of like we've appointed. I would say maybe change the word to and the makeup of the members of the authority. I just worry about the way that reads right now. It sounds like by what we're doing today, we're appointing people, this tense kind of thing. So I would just call it makeup.
Yes, we're looking for those categories, that criteria.
Right.
Yes.
So I would
No
just
names
change
yet.
that one. That's all. That's all. I think it's a good idea.
Thank you.
Commissioner O'Brien, anything? Okay. I will just say thank you for the changes. And in the original agenda packet, we had bylaws, but those were just as an example, so they're not part of the motion. We're just making a motion on the resolution that's attached.
Yeah, I think the IDA, once those 5 members are selected, then they would draft those up, and then that's when you can kind of talk through those and work through those at a workshop with those members.
And at what point, what's the timeline look like? You talked about 120 days for advertising, but at what point do you think you could get applications?
I've set a goal of 120 days to come back before you.
Okay.
And I believe the way that legal kind of drafted that resolution, it did give you some flexibility. So, for example, you had the flexibility that maybe if you didn't get in one type, but you had 2 attorneys, you it still fit within the category. So you would have that leeway, but that is to the pleasure of the board based on the applications that you receive at that time.
Okay. That's it. I just thanks for the modifications, the red line, and I don't have any other questions at this time. I'll go ahead and open it up for public comment. If there's anybody from the public wish to address us on this, excuse me, on this item, you can come forward. State your name. All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back. I'll need a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the resolution to form a Flagler County Industrial Development Authority.
I have a motion by Commissioner Hanson, seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. Everybody good with the resolution and the motion? All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you, Amy, Dolores. All right, we are going to move to item 9. These are our public hearings. These are quasi-judicial, unless they are labeled as legislative. So we've got 2 legislative ordinances and 1 quasi-judicial. So let's go to item 9A. This is the second reading and adoption of an ordinance prohibiting camping or sleeping on public lands. This is to request the board approve and adopt an ordinance on second reading. We've already seen this once and approved it. Mr. Hadid.
As you said, we have seen this. This is an outgrowth of legislation passed this past session, so this is something that we must promulgate to further supplement from the last hearing. There is an exemption for vehicles lawfully parked, and the question was, well, you know, does that create a big loophole as far as public properties? Since we do not have very many parking ordinances otherwise, we do have a promulgated policy that overnight parking at our county facilities is prohibited. For example, this parking lot, we can't have people parking overnight in order to, quote, camp or to sleep, et cetera.
All right, great. Thank you.
That's it, unless there are any questions.
I have no further questions. Anybody on the
No, we already,
dais?
the second reading.
Okay. All right, I'll open this up for public comment. Anybody wish to address the commission on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the second reading and adoption of the ordinance prohibiting camping or sleeping on public lands.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Hanson, seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deed. 9B is also legislative. This is the second reading and adoption of an ordinance revising the property maintenance code. This is recommendation here to approve on second reading and adopt the Flagler County Property Maintenance Code. Mr. Hadid, for your summary.
Yes, this was presented at the previous meeting. When we adopted the International Property Maintenance Code, it had some provisions that weren't in sync with what we were doing. So all this does is it conforms that beginning part of the International Property Maintenance Code to fit our system, which includes the due process rights that are under Chapter 162, which apply to code enforcement, as well as our use of special magistrates and how that's governed. So all this does is it conforms the existing language to the way we operate, the way the county operates.
Okay, thank you, sir. Commissioners, any comments? All right, we'll bring it out to the public for public comment. Anybody wish to address the commission on this item? Come forward. All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back and I'll call the question. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Well, we never made a
Didn't
motion.
Oh,
We never made a motion. Mr. Chairman, I move.
there you go. Thank you, sir.
I move we approve the second reading and adoption of an ordinance revising the property maintenance code.
Second.
All right, motion by Commissioner Hanson, seconded by Commissioner Sullivan. All right, last call for any questions or comments. All right, seeing none, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. All right, item 9C, this is quasi judicial, so I'll ask if there's any ex parte communications. Commissioner Hanson,
No, sir.
Commissioner Pennington,
No.
Commissioner Sullivan,
None.
Commissioner O'Brien.
No.
And the only comments I have is at the beginning of the meeting, I had the applicant came and talked about clarifying some questions that I sent Mr. Mangle about buffers. So that was all.
Very good.
Thank you. Mr. Mangle,
Adam Mangle, Growth Management Director, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners.
can
And
you
so-
state, I don't think I stated the actual project. This is project, let me just go do that real quick.
Yes, sir.
Project number 20230400071. This is to request for approval of a preliminary plat for Crestwind. Now your turn.
Thank you. And so this is that southern lands portion. We had the northern lands come in before Radiance. This is to the south. This is Crestwind. Superimpose the key map over the lands as best I can. As you can see there along the left side, along the west boundary, I-95, and then along the east boundary of the property, Old Kings Road. And this runs very close to the county line. There at the south edge is the canal that comes through. And then you can also, I guess, barely see underneath that, just south of the canal would be our, goodness, now I'm blanking out, Wexford Cove was the one that we had come before. And so that was the two parcels there. So that gives you some orientation. Eagle Lakes Phase 1, Section 1 is right underneath the numbers 11 and 12 there on the key map. You can see some of those platted lots there to kind of the bottom right that you can see on the west side of Old Kings. And then at the north end, the northern lands, the Radiance portion was just above this. We had this come forward, Radiance come forward for preliminary plat, I think at the last meeting, last evening meeting we had. Here's the land use and how that lays out. There's still some conservation that's within portions of this, ag and timberlands. And then you have the residential low-density single-family designation for most of this. PUD, that corresponds with the 2022 amendment that we had to the Eagle Lakes PUD. And then none of this is within a special flood hazard area. This is all Zone X. We do have a mix of soil types, and some of these do correspond to little bits of wetlands here and there, and those you'll see in more detail on the preliminary plat itself. And then this, again, being that graphic we had shown you before that shows those isolated wetlands, for the most part, within the limits of the Crestwind preliminary plat. There are 19 pages to this. I didn't include all 19, but I did put in the cover page, and I'll show you a few highlights here beyond that. So this, again, was the key map that showed the orientation. Notice at the top right there in what's labeled as 18, that is the entry point that comes in. And then you also see in 15, what the chair had mentioned is a portion of a buffer area. You see that cul-de-sac that comes and kind of comes over close to Old Kings and then terminates. That was what was a concern. Again, Eagle Lakes, the present limits of Eagle Lakes are shown basically underlying 11, 12, and 13 on the key maps. You can see how those will link up. And then I want to give you some overview of what you're seeing here with this. This I pulled out of the sheets because this one shows that linkage that we have at the north end of the cul-de-sac. You can see that that line that runs through, that's our emergency ingress-egress connection with Radiance. And so you'd had that before. I mentioned at the south end, this is at the very north end of the development. And so that's where that key connection happens between the two of these. This is a different product here in Crestwind. This is age-restricted. It's going to be gated. It's going to be 55 and up. And this is the one that Coulter intends to develop on their own with their own horizontal development. And so this will have a much different character than Radiance. Radiance will have selected builders. This Crestwind then is their key product, their typical product for age-restricted development. And so That's why this has a little bit more isolation, has that emergency ingress egress connection. Wanted to show you the areas you see with the hatching. Those are the wetlands that are there along with their adjacent upland buffers. And so you'll see those throughout on these pages. Mix of 40s, 50s, and 60-foot wide lots, consistent with the PUD that was approved. Here's, again, a bit of the wetlands that you'll see. Left-hand side, that's adjoining close to I-95. This shows a bit of, and you'll see in the center, it mentions billboard access easement with a dashed line, and that's a road, effectively an access that will run in between the lots. And you remember that from previous action by the board where we had shifted around some of the billboard easements prior to this plat. That was done leading up to this just for clarity's sake, and now it's depicted on the preliminary plat, will be depicted on the final plat. And then you can see one of those billboard locations on this one here on the left-hand side. Wanted to show you that of how those look when they adjoin 95. This is that area that I was mentioning where it terminates with the cul-de-sac and has that kind of that, what ends up being the southeast terminus closest to Old Kings, track with open space, stormwater that's designated that runs off to adjoin Old Kings. And I think also is going to show some emergency ingress also out from that point. And this was what the chair had mentioned. He had some concerns about, and Corey, as president, he can speak more directly on the record on what's intended there. There were buffers that were delineated along with berms where this plat specifically adjoined the parcels that were not part of the development. And so that was incorporated into the 2022 agreement. It was discussed in detail. It's depicted, I think, for the most part in the plans that are accompanied here. If you remember, there were a lot of oversized plans with this. Preliminary plat itself, the civil plans, and then the landscape drawings. And I'll show you one of those landscape plans here in just a second. This is the way the entry would look on the preliminary plat. And so this is that north entry that I mentioned. This is the main entrance. And then this also included within this plan set the roundabout plans. And so also one of the oversized drawings you saw were the roundabout itself. This is a single sheet from the roundabout, and this shows how that would be designed in part. So if you imagine what this is showing here, the entrance that we were just looking at is at the bottom of this drawing. North Old Kings is on the left, South Old Kings is on the right. At the top is the connection into Beulah Plantation. And there had been a more grand entrance proposed for Beulah Plantation, may yet happen on that side, but for now it's connecting into that existing curved entrance road. What comes in now is you come in and you make that turn to the right, you head down to the south into Beulah Plantation itself. And so that gives you some idea of how the roundabout's proposed. There were also cross sections included in the details that showed sidewalks. Sidewalks did come up at our planning board meeting. There's also some questions from the public about why the roundabout was proposed at all. And so you also saw that in the draft minutes from our planning board meeting last month. And then this shows a bit of the buffering, and this had come up also as part of our discussion, acknowledging that this is gated at this point. And so you can see then how, and I like this because I only showed, I think this one just for an example of how the street trees are proposed, but then you also see here just to the left-hand side to the west of the connection with Old Kings, you can see the roundabout superimposed, but you can see the proposed gate. What you'd have is have a pass-through line outside that would be based on the telemetry. You don't have, it would have the gate that would open because you have the transponder within your car. Then you'd have the gate that's there for service vehicles or deliveries. And the question was, is that enough room for traffic to stack? And I think with 775 houses, I think it's going to come close. You're not seeing the volume that you necessarily see in some other developments that we have. Plantation Bay, I think we hold out as the example. The Plantation Bay entrance, I mean, that's every bit of, I think my count was 2,500 units, I think is what we're at right now. And so it's a different scale that's there. And so with this one at 775, at best, this is how it's proposed for now. So I think I covered most of this, 437 acres more or less, at 775 single-family detached lots, 40s, 50s, and 60s. This does have that connection then through the emergency ingress egress to the northern lands, the Radiance Plat to the north. With that, I've got that FGUA letter that we also mentioned last time. This is the corresponding one for the radiance portion, where last time I presented this is the Crestwind side of that equation, and then this has that language that we talked about before, where they are setting aside estimated potable water usage demand, 232,500 gallons per day, 152,520 gallons per day of wastewater disposal, and kind of setting that out. Certainly we understand from the discussions with the city of Palm Coast, wastewater is the concern. And so right now, that's the problem that we have in this area. FGUA's intent is to buy that capacity from the city of Palm Coast. And then we then have put into our language at the preliminary plat approval that the final plat cannot be approved unless and until the utilities are in place. So with that, that gives us the three options: approval, preliminary plat again. This will allow horizontal infrastructure to be installed, no construction to commence before a land development permit, no final plat approval until FGUA has that potable water and sanitary sewer in place. Temporary waiver of secondary means of emergency access. Again, I showed you where that's going to happen. Once those two are in place, that waiver goes away. And any subdivision improvements that are not completed would need to be bonded. If instead you choose to deny the preliminary plat, please state your reasons on the record, or if you'd like to continue this, please also give us an idea of why the continuance is happening. The applicant and staff then can return at a subsequent meeting and address your comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Did the applicant come forward? Good morning.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Corey Sittler with Kimley Horn and Associates, engineer of record for the project. Not too much more to add from staff's presentation. The only thing that I'll clarify is the discussion that the Commissioner Dance and I had prior to the meeting was just clarifying some of the buffers along the emergency access about midway down the project that connects to Old Kings Road. Those sections are shown in our construction plans, and I actually looked through the documents in the backup material. It's on sheet 8.2. That's page 10 of the fifth part of the civil plans.
And just to clarify, on the attachments, only the phase one landscape plans were attached, so those didn't show the details of which is why I just had to clear that up. So thank
And
you.
we have landscape plans for the whole project, so we'll work with staff to make sure that gets incorporated. And we also have to present that before each phase of construction. So they'll be able to make sure that we're consistent with the PUD in that regard. And with that, I don't have anything else prepared for you, so just happy to answer any of your questions.
All right, great. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Hanson.
A couple of things. Adam, if you would confirm Tract X for me, the discussion we had. We're committed in there to do the maintenance on Tract X and
Tract X, I think, is
we think
the
is along the
additional
highway.
It's additional right-of-way that's on the west
I
end.
couldn't find it. Where the
Yes,
Tract
I
X was.
think I had that in the, and if y'all see that I've said something incorrect, on the technical staff report, I do have a list of the tracks, and I didn't check it after we talked, but it should be the additional right-of-way that we're receiving on the west side of Old Kings Road. And that
Well,
purpose
that makes
is.
sense, but I just couldn't find it.
Yes, sir.
So,
And it's for a multi-use path is the intent.
and we're committed for that 1 acre of land that we're
Yes,
going
sir.
to take care of it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then the emergency access, I found confusing. It looks like there's one to the north, one to the south, and then the main entrance is in the north. Am I reading that right?
That is correct.
Okay, and then those emergency accesses, what is there to prevent their use on a day-to-day basis? Are there going to be breakaway gates, or are there going to be landscaping and?
Typically, what happens is it's going to be compacted. It'll be sodded above the compacted base, and so that compaction is going to be sufficient for fire truck. And certainly, what we're thinking is more going to happen. It'll be the public that'll be using it if we need to because of a block at one end or the other. But it'll have a gate along with a Knox box or Knox lock.
On both of them, one to the north and
Yes.
one to the south?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
Well,
Commissioner
just
Sullivan?
on the cul-de-sac, I mean, the roundabout that's going in on Old Kings Road. And one of the things you just went over at one point was possible backup as the people come around to go in to the main place. I do see that, depending on how many people get stopped, but without a light there, you begin to have a problem if it starts to back up into the cul-de-sac. It doesn't look like there's a whole lot of room between where you get to the gate and the actual cul-de-sac. You mentioned it. I know I think it'll look nice and everything, but I do see without any kind of forced traffic pattern, in other words, people just keep coming around, and if you did get a backup at the gate there, it could cause a little bit of a problem. That's my only comment.
Understood.
All right. Anybody else? Any questions? The only thing I'll ask the applicant, there was some additional investigation in the large oak trees to see if they could be accommodated into the final plat. Do you know if any of those were accommodated? Or if there were any changes from the plan at the PUD approval stage?
Are they in any particular area? I wasn't aware that there was any.
Okay, it's probably a good indication of no. And could you clarify the drainage basin? Are you familiar with the basin?
Yes, sir.
Is this going south to Corona or to the north where it ties in more directly to the headwaters?
So the drainage from both Radiance and Crestwind are both connected just because that's what the existing property did. It kind of split flow north and south.
Okay.
So we're maintaining those drainage paths.
Okay, because I know at least through the connection, Corona and then to the Bulow being outstanding Florida waters is just that the appropriate design, additional treatment's been incorporated.
Correct. And that's all in the same water management district permit. So that goes hand in hand with the Radiance project.
And I guess the other one is just for clarification for the public. Have to go through the disclaimer. This was approved 2 years ago, this project, through the PUD approval. This is just another step in the process, so we're not approving any new development with this preliminary plat. It is just the next stage in the development, and our role really is just to make sure that these construction drawings comply with the PUD that was approved. And all right, any other questions for the applicant? All right, at this time, I'll open it up for public comment. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name's Walter Fafidio. I live at 3 Whitehall Court in the unincorporated Flagler County, and I'm here as a representative of the Fairchild Oaks Homeowners Association. I'm also a member of a loose alliance called RELUCA, which consists of Sugar Mill, Fairchild Oaks, Eagle Lakes, the existing Eagle Lakes, as well as Halifax Plantation down in Volusia County. And we've had, our purpose is the safety of the intersection, off-site intersection at Old Dixie Highway and Old Kings Road. And, we kind of looked at the roundabout as an either or, but now know a little bit more. But we still think the roundabout's a bad idea for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you look at the traffic studies, it indicates that in the horizon year of 2029, the segment where the roundabout is going to be going is operating well. The failure point is the intersection at Old Kings Road and Old Dixie Highway. And of course, these are senior citizens. I'm one myself, so I don't make as much fun of their driving as I used to. But nevertheless, if you look at that roundabout, you got dump trucks coming down there at 60 miles an hour, 80,000-pound dump trucks. These people are going to have to slow down. These people, the future residents, many of who are going to be senior citizens, are going to have to slow down to back into a gated community. They're going to be rear-ended. Motorcycles are going to be jumping over that roundabout. But, there it is. But the cost of this is going to be well over $1 million, and that's going to eat up all of the transportation impact fees that we feel could be used better in another place. And then finally, as you slow down the operating speed of a segment, you reduce the concurrency. So I know concurrency is not measured till the final plat, at least that's the way it used to be. And so you're creating not only are you costing the applicant a lot of money, but you're creating a problem down the road for them. But I'm not here to worry about them. Again, our sole focus is on the intersection of Old Kings and Old Dixie. And I do want to thank the commission and the staff for including in, I believe it's in the PUD agreement, a fair share payment option to Volusia County for the subject intersection. And I've obtained some new information. There's a project called Bay Point, which is in Volusia County at the intersection, which I think is the, can I get 5 minutes?
You'll have some more time, Mr. Video. Go ahead.
Thank you, commissioners, which is going to be the long-term solution. However, because of the utility issues and because of a concurrency issue in Volusia County with the schools and because of the nature of the housing market right now, I think both Crestwinds and this Bay Point in Volusia County are going to be some years down the road. So I'm here really just to implore. Perhaps this is most directed at you, Commissioner Sullivan, as our representative, you, and I believe you have an heir apparent, Commissioner Carney, future Commissioner Carney. I'd like you to call Troy Kent. He's the council member that represents this area also in Volusia County. I know there's no interlocal agreement and all that, but you know, we built Station 16 as a joint project and it's working super fine. So all we're asking, because this permanent solution is years off, let's get a right turn lane down there. I mean, what could it cost? Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment on this item? Any additional comments from the commission?
Well, just since you mentioned, we've been talking about this problem of Old Dixie and Old Kings for a long time. And we're going to continue to build more and more houses on Old Kings. And the problem at Old Dixie and Old Kings is going to continue. And it's going to be a long-term process. You know, to have the problem, we switch into Volusia County as you go past this development. And it really comes down, I think, Andy, to the TPO getting involved with this and getting it in the plan. So we've been talking about this a long time. It's not just that corner, it's the shopping center there and the intersection with 95. It all has to be included in an ultimate solution down there. Because I can see that cul-de-sac when it's in and we don't have that solution in effect and everybody diverts off 95 to go north on Old Kings Road. I mean, it's just going to create more and more of a traffic jam. And I don't know where we are. Is anything going on in the TPO, Mr. Chairman, on that?
Not there, no, sir.
And we've tried, but it's a tough one.
Well, didn't we get a authorization for a safety study of that intersection through the TPO last year? Wasn't that
the same thing?
I'll check. I don't recall.
Yeah, I don't believe that's the same thing. They did get what you're talking about, but it wasn't specifically for that.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
Okay. Any other follow-up comments? All right, I'll just have, we already closed it, but come on up.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan, I hear you say cul-de-sac, sir, but I think you mean roundabout.
Roundabout, I
just wanted
said
the
it
record to
wrong
reflect
before. The
that.
roundabout, right.
Thank you, sir.
Right. I mentioned it before. Sorry. Just old age.
My only comments would be, it's unfortunate to hear more misleading information about roundabouts. I mean, the roundabout is not a safety concern. And if anything, the intent is to slow down vehicles that are coming down and speeding down Old Kings Road. It's especially with elderly, it's been proven to be a safer than a four-way intersection, which is what that'll be in the middle of a high-speed road. Would I like to put money down at Old Kings and Old Dixie? Absolutely. Would I want to improve or even get a turn lane? But it is, best we can do is implore or direct staff to have those discussions with Volusia County staff. I've tried with Mr. Kent, but we've not been able to connect. So I think at a staff level, at least if there's consensus, we can have staff directly call down there and try to work or have some of those discussions. I think a right turn lane would be great. Ultimately, that's not the final solution there, but that's what we've got so far. I'm not willing to abandon the roundabout yet until we've got some concrete evidence or plans that Volusia's takes that segment seriously. Any other comments?
Yeah, I'm not against the roundabout. I'm just worried that where the gate is, that you could start to maybe move the gate in a little bit, might help with a few more spots.
So I guess I'm not. We have plenty of other. All right. Usually it's special events that cause those things, but the day-to-day traffic in and out is not going to warrant that. There's no golf course or clubhouse. They just have their own event amenities, in-house amenities. So I guess was there a traffic study that indicated the stacking lane is appropriate for this, or how was the stacking determined?
I mean, Adam kind of alluded to it, but usually whenever we have these types of designs, we obviously take stacking into account. I think just ballparking, it's around 200 feet, which would be about 10 vehicles from the gate to the property line. But usually if there's no specific code mentioned for these types of requirements, we'll use adjacent developments of similar size, and then use that as kind of an industry standard type, almost engineering judgment type of design element for that.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure that you're using the best data you have to design that. Okay. All right. We've done public comment. Looking for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion in two parts. I move that we approve the preliminary plat for Crestwind, Part 1, and that Part 2, that we direct staff to engage with Volusia County on seriously looking at some solutions for the intersection of Old Kings and Old Dixie Highway.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Hanson, seconded by Commissioner Pennington. Any other final thoughts or questions? All right, seeing none. All those in favor signify with aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, we will move to our reports and comments. County Administrator, any reports?
Thank you. Just wanted to recognize our hardworking staff and our employee engagement committee. They planned and participated in our second Halloween Fest 2024, which was held on Saturday, October 26th. We had a great community outreach event. A lot of people showed up. We think it was a huge success. It was out at Hidden Trails Community Center, but the event wouldn't have been possible without support from Commissioner Pennington. She came out, as well as we had the Sheriff's Police Athletic League, and then our dedicated employees that were there giving up their time on a Saturday. So to everybody who participated and made the event a huge success, I just wanted to say thank you for that. And then I did look at two different dates for the upcoming workshop that we can have prior to December 2nd. After the election, we'll look at finalizing it, but either November 20th after 1 p.m., or we can do November 21st pretty much any time that day. So those are 2 dates that we can get it out there. The following week is the week of Thanksgiving, so that might be a problem. And that concludes my report.
Okay, great, thank you. Mr. Hadid.
Yes, Commissioners, I'm going to have to beg your indulgence. I have 6 items. I'll go through them quickly. If you have any questions, you can stop me. It's just that a lot's happening. This morning, the judge ruled in the Palm Coast elections case. He determined that the item can go forward on the ballot. In other words, he denied the request to strike it from the ballot. He did so with this reasoning. He felt that the ballot summary was enough to alert voters that there was going to be a significant change, and it gave them a reference to where they could look to see that change if there was not enough information within that ballot summary. The ballot title specifically said it was going to update the Palm Coast Charter. It specifically called out the provision that was going to be eliminated, Section 3E. And the court, wanting to see how accessible is this information to a voter, did a Google test, so to speak, an informal Google test. Googled Palm Coast Charter, could go straight to 3E. He did that in 40 seconds. So he said it is incumbent upon the voters of Palm Coast to educate themselves as to this measure, but otherwise it was not fatally defective from the standpoint of the law. So that's one. So that got issued this morning. Next, I wanted to tell you this is, we have a legislative item through the Florida Association of Counties. That is a provision for financial accountability for the PACE programs that operate in the state of Florida. We've received some additional momentum on this issue. The public interest section of the Florida Bar has endorsed more accountability, and the Florida Bar is going to permit them to lobby that issue in the legislative session. Additionally, the Auditor General is engaging in some rulemaking to further create accountability with respect to PACE providers. The decision of whether this will be a priority of the Florida Association of Counties is going to be decided in Tampa at its Tampa Legislative Conference, December sometime, well, it'll be decided December 6th. That's the final vote from their conference of whether that's going to make it. So we're working with FAC, Florida Association of County Staff, to tee that up for the board of the Florida Association of Counties. Also, in the Dixie Motel case, I did advise you of this, but it was between meetings. The court did find that the Dixie Motel owners were in contempt and ordered, although the order hasn't been issued, but verbally from the bench, he ruled that they were in contempt, that they would have 14 days to pay the $250,000 based on his prior ruling that the agreement was valid and the county had fully performed all of its obligations under that agreement. And also that within that same 14 days, they needed to file the full financial disclosure of their operations, and failing that, a fine of $1,000 a day will be assessed. I'll also add, not a part of the order, but I'll also add for the board's edification that regardless of the outcome here, whether they pay on time or don't pay on time, we will be moving for attorney's fees for the entire conduct of the case, particularly because of their constant delaying action, which also was one of the findings of the court in the hearing that was conducted last week. Additionally, I want to let you know that we have Mr. Josie on the Carver Center case where his case was thrown out. He has filed an appeal to the Fifth District Court of Appeals. So obviously we'll be responding to that if the court accepts that appeal, and we obviously don't know. Finally, we have two animal issues. One involves a case that started to get litigated last week, and it's going to be continued until November 13th. It's an animal neglect case against Mr. Roy Payne in the unincorporated county. Doesn't have the proper zoning for the volume of animals that he has and requires a special exception, but he also faces criminal charges at the same time. So the judge went through 2 hours of trial this past week and 2 more hours scheduled. I think it's November 13th. And finally, we have an initial determination of a dangerous dog in Hammock Dunes. The owner of the dog intends to appeal, so that case will eventually make its way to you as the Board of County Commissioners. Sorry for all the multiple items. That concludes my report.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Any questions for Mr. Deed? All right. Thank you, sir. All right, commissioners, comments, Mr. Hanson. I could do that. Thank you, sir. At this time, we'll open it up for community outreach. This is the second period of public comment. Anybody wish to speak to the commission? Come on up. All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back. Commission reports. Mr. Hanson.
Just that I thoroughly enjoyed the Halloween costume display from our staff. They were ingenious, I thought. Some of them were really, really well done. So it was well done to the whole staff on that. So that's all I have, sir.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Pennington.
Yep, several things actually. So first, thanks to Heidi and Holly and Mike Dixon who volunteered their time to help out in the West. That thing seems to keep growing and growing. I think there was like at least 600 people in attendance, but it's nice because it's hard for kids to trick or treat in rural areas. So they were excited about it. So greatly appreciate that. Two, just to let you know what's going on, and I know, I think we're supposed to have someone start soon in land management, but we've had, in fact, the Cowarts were here, but they've left. Just some concerns, the Cowarts and McCraneys, I think have some letter of intent on their conservation, and I think I'm growing somewhat weary on action for it. So hopefully we'll be able to move those cases one way or the other forward so they can have some resolution, so they can just make decisions about their properties at Bull Creek and at the Cowart property. So that was that. And I think that's it. That seems to be the most concern, seems to be lately, is there's a lot of people asking about our conservation programs out west. And so if we want to, when the new person starts, kind of get that ball rolling again, to go out, maybe meet with cattlemen and go over the program again, that'd be great, because they are interested out there.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan.
Yeah, just to talk a little bit. I'm glad the judge was able to make a decision concerning the canvassing board, which I'm on for the staff. And I want to thank Commissioner Hanson, Commissioner O'Brien for working with us on the canvassing board. We've had a great turnout. Almost 70% of the possible voters in Flagler County have already voted early or by mail, which is a very good turnout. And just for the future, canvassing board in an election year, big election year, it's about 40 meetings when you add them all up for the 3 elections. So it's a good one to take seriously when you volunteer to be on the canvassing board. So tomorrow's election day. I hope we break records for the number of people who vote, and we should have our results here locally on all elections by 7:30 tomorrow night. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Brien.
Nothing, sir.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Hanson.
Veterans Day, November 11th. We've got a big parade. The Chief of Police of Bunnell is putting it on. It was a great success last year. I encourage everybody to come out. It's a short parade, but it's actually a lot of fun, and all the high schools participate. And the county's going to have a float. It's going to have a big float in there. So it'll be great. Just want to get everybody's attention on
Yep,
that.
absolutely. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. The only thing that I've got is just a reminder, I'll be out to say a few words with the sheriff at the State Guard Regional Training Facility groundbreaking. That's at 2 p.m. at Justice Lane. It's good to hear some of the activities that are going out on the west side. I appreciate the work that's going on out there, especially the community building events that we've done. It's especially even with the hurricane, there was a special level of attention given to the area and those that were in need the most. Glad to see that we worked hard for that, the whole team. Wanted to mention in the back is our new Human Resources Director, Charlie Picano. So welcome, Charlie, to the team. Everybody's excited to have you on board. Appreciate you coming to Flagler County and looking forward to getting to know you a little bit better. A FPC Bulldog, right? Yeah, very good. So another homegrown talent that's come back to Flagler County. It's a great story. And I don't have anything else. I appreciate everybody's time today. Thank you, staff, for putting together presentations for us. Thank you to our audience for being here today. At this point, I'll
Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn.
take adjourn. Everybody, meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank everybody.